Hello everybody and welcome to the latest edition of New Music Friday. I'm Nathan on Shuffle and this is my show where I give you all of the latest in progressive rock and music related news. This is Friday, September 10th, 2021, and I've got some interesting news items. I thought it was kind of a slow week in news, so I was worried about not having enough to share, but I think I've compiled some interesting stuff here that should be a good list of items to talk about. So hopefully you guys will be interested in the content, and please comment on anything that struck you in this news blast of mine. Yeah, so let's get into the news. The first thing I wanted to mention is the new release of Steve Hackett's album Surrender of Silence, which came out today. Steve Hackett, he was the guitarist in Genesis back in their kind of classic progressive rock period in the 70s, and now he's done a ton of solo albums on his own, and he's become quite a notable figure in even the modern prog scene. And he does a lot of touring as well, kind of as his own artist with a bunch of touring musicians from kind of the modern prog scene, and they do a lot of classic Genesis songs. Really incredible stuff. I've seen several live albums that they've done, and so really want to get to see that someday. If it ever comes close to me, you know, I've kind of missed the boat because it's definitely come around a few times, but I just wasn't aware of how special it was until it just was a little bit too late. So if he ever tours back over this way, I'm definitely attending and taking my dad because he would just be in love with it too, I think. But anyways, this news here is about the new album, Surrender of Silence, which kind of a harder edge, rockier album compared to his previous album that came out earlier this year, I believe, Under a Mediterranean Sky. And I was listening to it this morning since it just was released, and I was really digging it. I thought it was really cool. It kind of has a darker, moodier vibe at points. You know, it has kind of a cool aesthetic of like this kind of, you know, heavier, rockier feel to it. But also kind of has this kind of worldly feel to it. Like there's a lot of world music inspiration, stuff that sounds like it could be taken from like Russia, like Natalia, or to Africa, like Wing Beats, or even to more of an Eastern Asian style, like Shanghai to Samarkand. And it's really a diverse, interesting album. I just was really enjoying it this morning. Just thought there's a lot of great playing on it. He has a lot of great guests on it. You know, he has a lot of people from his touring band that are part of this. Roger King on keyboards is here. Rob Townsend, Jonas Reingold. Nad Sylvan has an incredible vocal spot on The Devil's Cathedral, which was one of my favorite tracks that I listened to, with this great like organ and darker menacing vibe. Really cool track. And just, you know, it's a great little album. I like relaxation music for Sharks, just kind of fun instrumental, you know, starts out kind of atmospheric and slow, but then gets into a more crazy, chaotic, proggy section, you know, that feeding frenzy section, I suppose. And I just really recommend listening to this one. I thought it was really cool. You know, I haven't really checked out much of his solo albums, so this is kind of new territory for me a little bit. You know, of course, I know all of his classic work with Genesis, but this really interested me and made me think maybe I should be exploring more of his music because he's such a great musician. Even his singing on this is really incredible. I don't think he's really known for being, you know, a powerful lead vocalist, but he does a great job on this, and it's really impressive, and I really respect him as an artist, that he's evolving with the times and doing something that's, you know, more in line with modern prog, but also has touches of his unique flavor. It's a cool vibe, and I really think this album should be heard, so please check that one out. So I just saw that Genesis released a documentary, the last Domino documentary, kind of documenting the rehearsals and preparation for their upcoming tour. And so I thought that was really cool, something to check out. Like I said, I haven't watched the whole full documentary yet. I've watched bits and pieces of it, just haven't had time to really sit down, but it was fascinating to see the band kind of talk about what they want to play on their upcoming tour and kind of practicing and figuring that out, kind of talking about the gap since the last tour they had. I believe it was, you know, several years back. And so it's a really cool look at this band and where they're at now in comparison to where they've been at in the past. A lot of it's kind of focused on Phil Collins and kind of his current state. I felt like there was a bit about, he's obviously can't really perform the music like he used to. I don't think he's able to really play drums anymore. And he kind of just sits on the stage and sings and does what he can with his physical abilities. But it's cool seeing that spirit, seeing him get re-excited about playing this music and, all the discussions the band have about what they want to do was a fascinating insight. So I thought this was really cool and a cool look at the band before they go out on this massive tour that they're doing, which unfortunately isn't coming near me in any form. I won't be going to this one most likely, but really cool for hardcore Genesis fans. Recommend you check that documentary out at the very least and see how you feel about the current state of the band and how you feel about their potential upcoming tour and so forth. So really cool. It's cool to get a chance to see them. There probably won't be many more chances to see them, I would imagine. So this is a really rare and important opportunity, I think, to give the band some due about the incredible career they've had. So be interesting to see how the tour goes and how things will shake out and so forth. So I'll be watching that with plenty of attention, kind of seeing how the tour works and what songs they're playing and how people are receiving it and how the band's doing. So another bit of news that I wanted to kind of mention, I mentioned this album, I believe, on New Music Friday before, is the new Cyan album For King and Country, which I believe the actual release date of the album, from what I remember, was September 24th, but it looks like it's pretty much available now. I bought it on Bandcamp this morning so that I could have an early listen to it. I haven't quite gotten to it yet because I was listening to the Steve Hackett album, but I'm really excited because I love The Sorcerer, the opening track that they had a video for on YouTube, and it's just a fantastic track. They had a little bit of a snippet of kind of a guitar solo for a different track up on Facebook, I saw. So really could be kind of a sleeper hit album of the year. It just sounds really fantastic. It's a re-recorded and reimagined album from back, like, I believe it was either late 80s or early 90s, something like that. Kind of Rob Reed, who's really a notable prog figure. He's one of the main members of Magenta and does a lot of solo stuff as well. He is kind of the one who brought this together, who wrote these albums originally, and thought he should refactor this material into something, more modern sounding. And I think it was when he heard Pete Jones's voice that he knew that, he had the perfect vocalist to kind of bring this project back to fruition. So it's a really cool story. I was listening to an interview Rob Reed did with the Prog Report where he kind of talked about this process and how he kind of brought these songs back from obscurity a little bit and kind of found a way to bring justice to these tracks. And so it just sounds like it's going to be a fantastic album. I'm really excited to listen to it, and I'll definitely be reviewing it in a few weeks' time. There's quite a bit of things I have scheduled before this comes, but I'm excited to talk about it. I think it could be one of the better prog releases this year because it just from that opening track alone, it sounds like classic vintage, symphonic prog that just with modern production and values and great playing, just everything I'm looking for in modern progressive rock music. So definitely excited to keep listening and to hear the rest of the album. So hopefully you guys will check that out. I'll put the links in the description of like where to order it. You can order the CD version, or you could go to Bandcamp and order the album there and have a listen. So just one that I recommend, at least from what I've heard. Like I said, I haven't heard the full album, so I can't give the full-on, stamp of approval quite yet, but I'm pretty close to being there just with that opening track, which was fantastic. So really wanted to point attention that way. I saw an interesting bit of news here, kind of as my next item. Alan Parsons is releasing a new live album and video called The Neverending Show. Pretty cool. I must admit I'm not a big Alan Parsons person, but as I've been kind of delving into music from the past and really looking at artists, not just in prog, but also in kind of rock and pop and art rock and arena rock and all that kind of stuff. I've been looking at a lot of different artists that just get a lot of attention and notoriety. And I feel like Alan Parsons has kind of come up in those conversations. So it's kind of, I'm planning to kind of do a deeper dive into Alan Parsons' projects and some of those earlier albums. So that's why this news kind of stood out to me, as it looks like this is a live show that was recorded in the Netherlands. It looks like it's being released November 5th, 2021 in several different formats as usual, 2 CD plus DVD, a Blu-ray, and different vinyl packages as well. So looks like a really cool snapshot of Alan Parsons and his work. Definitely has a cool lineup, and I really thought the video was cool. They released a little video of games people play. So, maybe not totally progressive, in a sense. To me, a lot of the stuff I've heard from Alan Parsons really veer more towards kind of, the normal, 70s rock, maybe even soft rock at times, veering into the 80s, style. But I think there's a lot to enjoy there from Alan Parsons, and he's definitely notable within the prog realm. So thought I'd mention that if you're at all interested to go check that one out. Next, I wanted to mention briefly, this might not be for everyone. It's a band that I've kind of flirted with through the years, and sometimes they're a bit more too heavy for me at times, but I know a lot of people in the prog community really love this band. I'm talking about Mastodon, and they're releasing a new album coming up in October 29th. The album's titled Hushed and Grim. This could be a really cool album, so I wanted to mention it for all fans. They released, basically a lead-off single for it as well, called Pushing the Tides, that you can listen to. So it sounds like it could be cool. If you're a fan of the band, they're kind of more into that sludge metal, side of prog, if you even want to call it prog. But they have a lot of interesting arrangements and intricate things that they're doing in the music that kind of warrant a little bit of interest for the prog community, I think, and kind of have a little bit of shared commonality with some of the other prog adjacent bands that are kind of more in that metal vein, I'd say. So just thought I'd mention it. It looks like it's a pretty lengthy album that has a lot of, ambition to it. So it could be a notable release for fans of Mastodon. The cover art was really cool. I wanted to mention that. I saw it and immediately thought about the Deer Hunter, and their Axe albums have a lot of similar artwork with that tree vibe, So, seeing that album, just scrolling through my, social media or whatever, it kind of grabbed my attention because of how it looks similar to Deer Hunter album covers and so forth. So just wanted to mention that briefly. And it's their follow-up to their 2017 album Emperor of Sand, out on October 29th via Reprise Records, and it looks like it was written over the past year in their hometown. Looks like they're from Atlanta. So produced by David Bottrell, who's known for his work with Tool, Muse, and Peter Gabriel. Of course, a lot of prog connections just in those names. So should be really cool, should be really interesting, and definitely one to check out if you're into that heavier side. And then as a final kind of small note, just because it's notable to me personally, is Arjen Lucassen has been kind of teasing an upcoming Star One album that's coming out, probably, I'm guessing, beginning of next year. But he always does these elaborate guessing games to kind of guess the different musicians, the different singers, and even the different subjects of the songs. With Star One, as opposed to Arion, of course, Arjen Lucassen is the genius behind Arion, which is probably his primary project that he's known for. But Star One is more of a side project, kind of focused on more individual stories from different movies and TV shows in the sci-fi realm. He's done 2 albums of Star One so far, so this will be the 3rd one, and it's all songs about, based on movies about time travel or time in some fashion, So he's released several little snippets so far where he kind of gives a snapshot of the lyrics, and you kind of have to guess what movie it's from, essentially, that the song was inspired by. So I just found that cool. So if you're at all interested, to go check out Arjen Lucassen on social media, on his Facebook or wherever, and kind of participate in these games. I find it fun as a sci-fi nerd and also as a music, progressive rock nerd. I think it's kind of the perfect melding of those worlds a little bit. So I really appreciate that. Arjen Lucassen is just a fantastic musician. He's one of my heroes, one of my favorites. There might be, teaser, might be a little bit of his work coming in a Jana Reacts in the near future. So really excited to hear his new album, to hear kind of some more Star One. It's more, maybe a bit more heavy than the Arion albums, but it's always really well produced, really great instrumentation, really great singing. He brings on the best singers in the world, really, to play on his albums, and I have a lot of fun with them, so I wanted to mention that. And so those are the basic news items I had for today. Maybe not tons of big, huge news, but I think there was some fun things in there, hopefully, for you guys. As for the channel, kind of a small update. Had a pretty good week, I think. I did another Nightwish reaction video with my wife, which was really popular and is getting lots of attention and views. Really appreciate the Nightwish Army and their support of us, and all the great comments that I've been getting on there, and all the great suggestions. Gotten a lot of suggestions, and different symphonic metal to check out and different other bands and so forth. So really appreciate that, and I'm grateful for the Nightwish Army. Also, I did a solo review. My album spotlight this week was on the new Leprous album of Philion, which I liked a lot. Sounds like in the comments there's some kind of mixed feelings about the album, perhaps. Some people were a bit disappointed by it, but my review is very positive. I thought it was really cool, and I like their newer direction. So maybe that's not to everyone's liking, but hopefully you'll respect and appreciate my thoughts about it. And if you're at all interested in the new Leprous and what it sounds like and my impressions of it, please check out that review. I really had a good time filming that one, and I've been listening to the album a lot, so really recommend that. And as for upcoming things, of course, another Jana Reacts this weekend. That should be fun. We're going to kind of most likely delve back into more of a classic prog track, so that should be fun. And I'm going to do kind of an interesting album spotlight this week. I'm still devising it. I'm still kind of figuring out how to format it, but in my mind right now, it's basically the next in my Defining Albums Through the Years series, where I talk about different defining albums, going back to like the 60s to now, albums that are notable in the pop and rock world, that are a little bit outside of my typical progressive rock realm, but are highly, widely regarded as classics by everybody. And so this week I'm kind of focusing on 3 different albums for this series, and I'm kind of planning to release them as kind of short videos throughout the week. And these are basically solo albums by the Beatles members. I've been interested in the Beatles a lot lately, and I love the Beatles and kind of a mega fan of the Beatles, but I never really delved too much into their solo work post-Beatles. So that's kind of what I'm delving into, 3 notable albums from that post-Beatles era. So we'll see how that goes. Hopefully you guys will catch those and enjoy those. So once again, I just want to close with a great big thank you to my audience, to people who watch these videos regularly. Really appreciate that. Trying to grow the channel little by little, and still trying to devise ways to kind of bring more content and bring more interest. I've mentioned before, I'm starting that podcast, which I've done a couple episodes of. Last week I did an episode of the 10 best Big Train songs. So if you want to go to Spotify, of course, it's always in the description, the link to that podcast. And, if you don't have Spotify or don't care for streaming, that's okay. It's not, it's not an essential thing to listen to. You could just stick with my YouTube videos, which won't change, which will just always be stable and the same thing all the time. But it's just an additional way for me to share music and be able to playful songs in a sense for you guys to check out about all the stuff I'm talking about. So thanks again, and please subscribe if you like what I'm doing here. Please comment on any news items I may have missed, or any comments about some of the things I've talked about. How do you feel about the Steve Hackett album? How do you feel about Genesis's upcoming tour and the things that they're doing in that documentary feature? How do you feel about Mastodon? Are you a fan of Mastodon, or is that just way too out there and heavy for you? Any comments are appreciated. I love the back and forth, and I try to be responsive, and I really enjoy reading comments. So thank you guys so much, and once again, please just keep enjoying the music, whatever you guys are listening to. Thanks. Bye.